Imagine standing at a podium, leaning into the microphone and just expecting a roaring round of applause simply because the word dumb ends with a silent B.
Right.
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you are that curious mind looking to kind of cut through the daily noise and get to the underlying mechanics of how public image is crafted, well, you are in exactly the right place.
You really are.
Today we are exploring a highly analytical opinion piece. It's by Eric Reinhardt, published on June 3, 2026, and it's titled The Wharton Myth and the Performance of Intelligence. And our mission today is basically to deconstruct this essay's central thesis, which is all about how political figures construct this aura of intellect and what happens when the seams of that performance really start to show.
Yeah, but before we go any further, we really need to pause and make a very clear, direct statement to you, the listener.
Daily.
Because the source material we're examining today involves some highly charged political commentary about Donald Trump and the Democratic Party. Because of that, we want to explicitly state that we are taking absolutely no political sides here.
Not at all.
We are not endorsing Eric Reinhardt's viewpoints, and we're not taking a stance on any of the political figures involved. Our one and only goal in this deep dive is to impartially convey and analyze the ideas, the rhetorical strategies, and the factual claims presented in the original source material.
Exactly. We are treating this text purely as an artifact to examine the broader concept of performing intelligence. Nothing more, nothing less.
Spot on.
So let's just jump right into the inciting incident that kicks off this whole essay. The author points to a recent interview where Donald Trump refers to Democrats as Dumocrats.
Right, the nickname.
Yeah, but it's not the nickname itself that catches the author's attention. It's what happens next. Immediately after delivering the insult, Trump explicitly pauses to explain to the audience that most people don't know the word dumb ends with a silent B.
Wow.
Okay, let's unpack this. Was this just like an off-the-cuff joke, a little linguistic riff that maybe just didn't land? Why anchor an entire thesis on this one specific, seemingly fleeting moment?
What's fascinating here is that the text completely rejects the idea of this being a joke or, some strategic bit of wordplay.
Really?
Yeah, the essay frames this moment specifically as the, quote, political vocabulary of a spiteful child.
Okay, that's strong.
It is. The real tell isn't the playground nickname. The tell is the compulsion to explain the silent letter.
Ah.
Reinhardt argues that proudly explaining a fundamental, basically elementary rule of English spelling reveals this desperate, almost foundational need to be seen as intellectually superior to the room.
Right, because it assumes the audience doesn't know.
Exactly. It's treating the audience as if they are entirely unmoored from basic literacy. And by doing that, he's positioning himself as the lone educator.
It's kind of the linguistic equivalent of doing a single push-up and then looking around the gym to make sure everyone saw you do it.
That is a perfect way to put it, which sets up the core thesis perfectly. Reinhardt says there is a massive structural gulf between demonstrating intelligence through complex problem-solving or nuanced thought and merely performing the aesthetics of intelligence for an audience.
Showing versus telling.
Right. True intellect is self-evident in the work produced. But performed intellect, that requires a script, a stage, and a constant demand for validation over the most mundane achievements.
Like spelling a four-letter word.
Exactly.
So if explaining a silent B is the modern symptom, where did this specific brand of intelligence theater actually originate?
Well, we have to look at the prop that has been held up for 60 years.
Right.
The essay argues that this behavior isn't some recent development of the political era. It is built on a decades-long mythology, specifically what he calls the Wharton myth.
Okay, so to understand the modern performance, the text takes us back to the 1960s, right? To examine the primary academic credential used to anchor this entire public persona.
Exactly. We're looking at the origin story of the prop itself.
Let's lay out the historical baseline as presented in the article, just separating the verified timeline from the mythology. Fact 1, Donald Trump did not start his college career at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
Right. He was somewhere else first.
Yeah, he actually spent his first 2 years at Fordham University. Fact 2, he then transferred into Wharton and graduated in 1968. The essay acknowledges this as objective history.
It does. The mythology, then, is not the attendance itself. It's the retroactive branding of what that transfer actually meant.
How so?
It's about how the subject wants the public to perceive that specific credential today.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Even as a transfer student, I mean, getting into an Ivy League school like UPenn is objectively an achievement, right? Like if I tell you I got a ticket to the most exclusive concert in town, that's impressive.
Sure.
But what if we find out they were actually just handing out tickets on the street? I mean, if someone manages to transfer into a highly selective environment, that requires a baseline of capability.
Well, that is the exact modern assumption the performance relies on. The essay attacks the legend of the transfer by highlighting the concept of the halo effect.
The halo effect.
Yeah. The Wharton of today is universally known as an impossibly selective elite crucible of business acumen, right? It boasts single-digit acceptance rates.
Right, super tough to get into now.
Exactly. But the performer is taking the prestige of the 2026 Wharton brand and retroactively applying it to his 1966 admission.
Oh, wow. And the essay pulls reporting to show that Wharton in 1966 was a vastly different landscape.
Completely different.
According to admissions officers from that exact era, over half of the applicants were admitted. The reporting cited notes that transfer students often faced even better odds of getting in.
Yeah, and another count puts the general admission rate around 40% back then.
That's wild. Let the sheer scale of that difference sink in for a second. When an institution is admitting roughly 1 out of every 2 applicants, it is still a respected school, absolutely. But it is not the impenetrable fortress of genius that the modern public imagines.
No, not at all. The text argues that the credential proves he gained entry to a solid business program during an era of high accessibility.
It does not serve as undeniable empirical proof of a quote-unquote super genius intellect.
Exactly, which is how it has been weaponized in the public sphere for decades.
It's essentially a magic trick relying on misdirection.
Yeah.
The magician holds up the Wharton degree, and the audience's brain immediately fills in the modern context. They think of 5% acceptance rates and grueling academic gauntlets. The misdirection keeps the audience from looking at the reality of the 1960s admission standards.
And the author takes that misdirection a step further by bringing in specific names from the reporting trail to shatter the illusion entirely.
Oh, yeah, the interviews.
The essay highlights James Nolan, the actual admissions officer who interviewed Trump prior to his transfer. And there's a crucial detail noted in the text here.
What's that?
This interview happened following a request connected to Trump's family, which implies a level of access that goes beyond a standard application.
Right. And Nolan later stated on the record that he saw absolutely no evidence behind the repeated claims of Trump being a super genius.
Yep.
The first-hand account directly contradicts the carefully curated public boasting,
which introduces a major crack in the foundation of the persona. I mean, when the people who are actually in the room building the credential deny the mythology of it, the performance has to rely entirely on volume to drown them out.
Okay, but if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, wait a minute, the essay uses another piece of evidence that feels a bit shaky.
Oh, the quote.
Yeah, there is arguably no, quote, more explosive in the whole text than the one involving an attorney named Frank DePrima. He claims that a Wharton marketing professor, William T. Kelly, told him repeatedly over the years that Donald Trump was, quote, the dumbest goddamn student I ever had.
Yeah, that's a heavy quote.
It is, but the essay openly admits this is a secondhand quote. It is not a direct public statement from Professor Kelly himself.
True.
So, should we really trust a decades-old game of telephone when evaluating a core argument? Doesn't relying on secondhand information weaken the thesis?
Well, anticipating that exact pushback is a hallmark of a well-structured argument. The text doesn't hide that it's secondhand. It actually tells the reader to be precise about that fact.
Okay.
But Reinhardt argues that secondhand does not automatically equate to meaningless, especially when evaluated within a larger framework of circumstantial consistency.
Ah, so it's building a case where all the historical arrows point in the exact same direction.
Precisely. This isn't an anonymous rumor floating around an internet message board. It was published in a reputable magazine. It is tied to specific named individuals, both the attorney and the professor.
Right.
And it aligns seamlessly with the broader pattern of evidence. You have the secondhand quote from the professor, the first-hand quote from the admissions officer who saw no genius, and the verified 40 to 50% admission rates of the era.
So the essay argues that the entire body of reporting consistently and independently undercuts the fantasy biography.
Exactly. The burden of proof shifts back to the performer to provide actual evidence of the claimed genius.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time analyzing a credential from 1968, But a 60-year-old academic prop eventually starts to lose its luster.
It does.
If a public persona is built entirely around an impenetrable intellectual dominance, well, that persona inevitably requires modern validation. You need new proof to keep the audience engaged.
You definitely do.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the essay tracks the shift from college transcripts to medical records.
Yes.
A significant portion of the piece is dedicated to what is termed the MoCA obsession.
The Montreal Cognitive Assessment. This represents a massive psychological pivot in the argument.
How's it?
Well, the reliance on this specific test tells us far more about the performer's internal state than the test results themselves.
The essay points out that Trump has repeatedly bragged about getting perfect scores on this specific assessment. He brought it up heavily in 2018, and it surfaced again during medical disclosures released in 2025 and 2026. Why the intense fixation on this particular piece of paper?
The fixation is glaring because of what the test actually measures. The MoCA is entirely divorced from the concept of high-level intelligence.
Okay.
It is not an IQ test. It is not an application for Mensa. It does not measure strategic brilliance, geopolitical understanding, or, exceptional critical thinking.
So what is it?
It is a clinical screening tool used by neurologists and general practitioners to detect possible cognitive impairment. Its primary function is to serve as an early warning system for conditions like dementia or Alzheimer's.
Wow. Okay, so to put that in perspective for you listening, we are talking about a test that asks you to, identify a drawing of a camel.
Right.
Or draw the hands on a clock to show a specific time.
Yeah.
Passing it means your brain is successfully executing basic functions. It's like bragging that you went to the DMV, passed the basic eye exam where you read the giant letters on the wall, and then using that to claim you're qualified to race in Formula One.
That analogy perfectly captures the absurdity the essay is highlighting.
Passing means you meet the minimum baseline, not that you're an elite driver. The misdirection is happening again.
Exactly.
He's waiving the DMV certificate, relying on the audience's assumption that any medical test equals a certification of elite capability.
Yep. Passing the MoCA simply establishes that you are not actively showing signs of severe cognitive decline. It establishes the absolute floor of mental competency.
Not the ceiling.
Exactly. It does not establish a ceiling. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of the text's psychological argument, this is where the mechanics of the performance truly come into focus.
So how does this transition from a simple boast to a psychological tell?
By wielding a baseline dementia screening exam like a championship trophy, the subject is fundamentally telling on himself. It reveals a staggering depth of insecurity.
I see.
Consider the mechanics of genuine intelligence. A truly secure, highly intelligent individual does not feel the compulsion to use a baseline medical screening as a certificate of their brilliance.
Right. They wouldn't even think to bring it up.
Exactly. They don't need external low-bar validation because their intellect is validated by their daily output and strategic execution.
Which brings us back to public behavior and the very real cracks in the performance. The essay mentions specific public stumbles over relatively standard words, using acetaminophen as a prime example.
Right.
Now, anyone who speaks publicly for a living is going to trip over a multisyllable word occasionally. I mean, we do it all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
So is the argument just boiling down to calling someone stupid for a minor verbal flub?
No. The text is very careful to avoid that trap. It explicitly clarifies that a single mispronunciation, or even a handful of them, does not equate to a lack of intelligence.
Okay, good.
Public speaking is difficult, and fatigue is real. The core issue, Reinhart points out, is not the isolated stumble. The issue is the surrounding ecosystem of behavior. It's the pattern.
The pattern of the performance failing to match the reality.
Exactly. You have to zoom out and look at the entire behavioral mosaic. You have public verbal stumbles over basic vocabulary.
Right.
You combine that with the creation of childish grade school nicknames like Dumocrats.
Yeah.
You add the boastful insecurity of demanding applause for knowing about a silent B. You compound it with a reliance on a 60-year-old academic credential that was far less rigorous than claimed.
Oh, man.
And you top it all off with waving a cognitive screening test around as undeniable proof of genius.
When you stack all of those elements together, the performance collapses under its own weight. It's a constant, exhausting need to self-certify.
It really is.
It's the equivalent of putting up a neon billboard that flashes, "I am smart," precisely because you lack the actual substance to prove it through action.
Exactly. The ultimate conclusion drawn from the text is that this specific brand of relentless boasting does not reveal strength or confidence or command.
It reveals the opposite.
Right. It is the manifestation of deep-seated anxiety. It is an act. It is pure theater, substituting for serious, rigorous thought. And more importantly, it highlights why this specific trait, intelligence, is the one being so aggressively performed.
That's a really crucial layer. I mean, why not just lean into being a tough, uncompromising billionaire? Why the absolute obsession with being recognized as a genius?
Because intelligence is the one currency that wealth cannot automatically purchase, and authority cannot simply mandate.
Oh, that's a great point.
You can buy buildings, you can command subordinates, and you can project toughness through aggression. But genuine, undeniable intellect requires a mental rigor that cannot be faked in the long term.
So true.
When a persona built on total dominance encounters a trait it cannot easily conquer or acquire, the resulting insecurity forces an overwhelming, theatrical overcompensation.
It's the difference between being something and pretending to be something. And when the pretending gets too loud, it actually highlights the absence of the very trait being performed.
Exactly.
The louder the magician yells for you to look at the wand, the more obvious it becomes that the bird is dead in the cage.
Which is a profound realization when we look at how public figures operate. True intelligence is fundamentally quiet.
It doesn't require a dedicated PR campaign.
No. Truly intelligent people do not need to constantly announce their IQ to every room they walk into. They don't need to hide behind the mythologized prestige of a 1960s school credential, and they certainly don't expect the public to marvel at their ability to spell four-letter words.
Right.
Their competence is a baseline reality. It's not a daily marketing initiative.
So what does this all mean for you? Why does dissecting a political op-ed about a specific figure's public image matter for your daily life?
Well,
I think this essay, entirely regardless of where you stand politically, forces us to rigorously examine how we evaluate the people around us. Think about the leaders in your workplace, the influencers you follow online, the colleagues you interact with every day. Are we, as an audience, being easily swayed by loud, confident, aggressive assertions of genius?
or are we demanding actual, quiet demonstrations of competence and critical thought?
Exactly. It is a stark reminder to look past the branding and evaluate the actual substance.
That is a vital takeaway, and it pushes us to reflect on our own complicity in this dynamic. This raises an important question for you to mull over as we wrap up today. Something that builds on the essay's core arguments, but turns the lens back on us, the audience.
I love this part.
If this kind of intelligence theater is so transparently flimsy when we actually break it down and look at the historical facts and medical realities, why does it keep working?
Why does the performance survive the scrutiny?
Exactly. In our modern era of 15-second social media clips, algorithmically driven outrage, sound bites, and completely fractured attention spans, have we actually designed a media ecosystem that naturally rewards the loud performance of a trait over the quiet possession of it?
Right.
Are we so overwhelmed by information that we've started accepting the billboard as proof of the product? We have to ask ourselves if we are the audience that keeps demanding the magicians stay on stage, even when we can clearly see the strings.
That is a brilliant and challenging question to leave off on. We know the performance is happening, we can see the mechanics of the illusion, but maybe we've built a world where the theatrical performance is the only thing that fits neatly onto our screens.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this conversation helped you cut through the noise and gave you some new analytical tools for looking past the theater in your own media consumption.
Keep asking those tough questions.
Absolutely. Keep looking for the quiet reality behind the loud words. And remember, just because someone points to the clock and tells you they're a genius doesn't mean they actually know how to build the gears. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.